Newsday continues here on One News Now. I'm Riza Diaz. The Philippines' active COVID-19 cases have breached the 200,000 mark. Just today, the Health Department reported over 11,100 new infections, pushing the active case count to more than 203,000. The virus claimed the lives of 72 patients in the past 24 hours, bringing the death toll to more than 15,800. Some 706,000, meanwhile, have gotten better from the disease, with nearly 800 new recoveries reported today. Now, despite the continuous rise in cases, the COVID-19 reproduction rate, at least in Metro Manila, has decreased. Octa Research Group reported that the reproduction number stood at 1.16 in the week of April 9 to 15. That's a slight improvement from the roughly 1.25 in the week before that. The figure refers to the average number of people that one infected person will pass the virus to. Now, given that decrease in COVID reproduction rate, is it safe to say now that we're seeing a downward trend? Let's ask straight from Octa Research Fellow Guido David. Professor, good evening.
Yes, hi, good evening, Riza.
First, what's your reaction, sir, over the 11,000 new cases today? Does this reflect your projections?
Actually, Riza, over the past few days, we have noticed that the trend is actually maybe changing direction. I mean, we can say that definitely, but what we're saying is that the cases that we're seeing now are higher than what we were expecting or hoping to have. And just to give a more concrete example, last week we actually had a negative growth rate in the Philippines, which means that the average number of cases in the entire country decreased by 3%. But this week, compared to last week, it actually increased by about 5%, I believe. So what we're saying is that the cases have started to increase again, and this is very concerning.
Oh, sir, the current reproduction rate stands at 1.16, while the growth rate is at a negative 0.4%. What does this mean exactly?
Well, the reproduction number is just the overall trend. It's more of a long-term trend. And the fact that it's 1.16, it did improve compared to last week. But it's also showing that the trend is not yet, it's not yet less than 1. And then the 1 week growth rate was negative for last week, but the reproduction number represents like an overall trend of transmissions. And that's why what we're seeing right now is concerning, because even though the reproduction number decreased, right now we're seeing a positive growth rate, and it might indicate that if this continues, the reproduction number is bound to start increasing again.
So, sir, it's not the other way around. We're not seeing a downward trend in overall COVID-19 infections rate.
Well, right now, we're not seeing a downward trend. And in fact, a few days ago, we reported that 5 cities in NCR were already on a 2-week decline. But now that's not the case, and only 2 cities are on a 2-week decline, and that's Pasay and Taguig. The rest are not on a 2-week decline. Some are still having a negative growth rate for 1 week, but there are cities in NCR which are having an increase in cases.
As you mentioned, sir, in these areas where reproduction rate decreases, more cases are being reported. So based on your projections, how soon can we actually reach the grim milestone of 1 million cases?
Well, we're actually projected to reach 1 million total cases sometime next week. It could be either April 23rd or 24th. I believe that's a Friday or a Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. So yes.
Sir, so far with the quarantine restrictions that we have here, the ECQ and NCR Plus, that's downgraded to MECQ, what are your current assessments? Is this working effectively?
Well, the ECQ was effective because it reduced the reproduction number from about 1.92 all the way down to 1.2. And initially, we were seeing positive effects of the MECQ, but again, it's a bit premature because the effects for the first days of the week, this past week, were primarily due to the ECQ because there is a delay in effect. For example, the numbers we saw on Tuesday and Wednesdays are usually still a product of the weekend numbers, so it's still more or less part of the ECQ. So when we're seeing an increase in cases, the past few days, perhaps from Wednesday to today, that's concerning because it could mean that the MECQ is not as effective as we had hoped it would be. Now, again, I'm saying that it may be premature to make conclusions because this is just a matter of a few days. We could still give it a few more days to assess, to make an assessment. So hopefully by maybe Monday or Tuesday, we'll have a better assessment of the effectiveness of MECQ. But right now, we are slightly worried that the MECQ is not working as well as we hoped it would.
Sir Guido, by the end of the month, the government will either retain or change the current quarantine status. What can you recommend to them so far?
Well, it's too early to make a recommendation because we want to see the overall trend. So we don't want to make a premature assessment of what's happening, of the current state. So, the numbers may still improve tomorrow or, within the next few days, and we're hoping it would, and then we could make an assessment. But by the end of the month, a lot of things could still happen, so we would want to wait. But if the cases are starting to increase by next week, we will definitely, let you guys know, let the people know. We would be having this in our reports to inform everyone, the government, and interested parties that cases are starting to increase because this would affect the pandemic management.
Well understood. Thank you, sir. That's Sir Guido David of the Octa Research. And we'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Riza Diaz. To get their cash aid or ayuda, Las Piñas residents have to endure long lines in the summer heat. But some are supposedly resorting to fixers, an issue local officials are now investigating. JC Cosico has the story.
Residents of Barangay CAA in Las Piñas City had to endure the summer heat just to claim their ECQ ayuda. 58-year-old Rosario Cruz has been waiting for more than 5 hours. She arrived around 6 a.m. at the Timog Covered Court.
Masyado po mainit. Ako tayo po kami, pila, pawis, gutom.
It also took Margarita Kitaro hours to claim her cash aid at the Nara Covered Court Payout Center. She said she will be using the cash aid for her business.
Malit na tindahan, idagdag ko po kaysa mangutang.
Beneficiaries were given control numbers to limit the people lining up in payout centers. Barangay officials say only around 500 persons can be accommodated daily, but only a handful of cashiers handle the payout, resulting in long waiting hours.
Kunyari bukas ang schedule nila, ngayon binibigay na namin yung number nila. Naka-color code po yun para itong kulay na to para sa araw na to.
Some residents would also take their chances despite the curfew.
Sadyang matigas ulo ng iba, nagbabakasakali, minsan pipila ng alas 2, alas 3, madaling araw, meron tayong curfew, kaya binubugaw namin sila.
That's why local officials are also investigating the alleged sale of control numbers involving a barangay tanod. This would supposedly fast-track paying residents claiming of the ayuda.
Sinong makapag-pinpoint na nabentahan siya ng ticket, yung araw na yun tatanggalin namin yung nabentahan ng ticket na tanod. Tanod na binabanggit eh.
Las Piñas City received 501 million pesos for the ECQ Ayuda. About 76,000 of the city's over 124,000 family beneficiaries have so far received their cash assistance. The Las Piñas CSWD targets to finish the distribution by April 20.
Pipilitin namin. Kung hindi naman siguro, baka makihingi kami ng extension if in case.
The Las Piñas CSWD says grievance committees were set up in barangays to address financial aid-related concerns. For News 5, JC Cosico, we are One News.
With the ongoing threat of the COVID-19 pandemic, governments have advised the public not to join or organize events that draw large crowds. So what do science and evidence tell us about mass gatherings and the spread of COVID-19? The World Health Organization tells us in this video.
Hello and welcome to Science in 5. I'm Vismita Gupta-Smith and we are talking about vaccines, variants and mass gatherings today. WHO's chief scientist, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, will be talking to us about these issues. Welcome, Soumya.
Hello, Vismita. Nice to be back doing Science in 5.
What do we know today about how much protection these vaccines are giving us?
What's really important is that almost all of these vaccines are highly protective against severe disease, which leads very often to hospitalization and then, unfortunately, to death. So while they may not completely prevent infection, the immunity that the body develops in response to vaccination is good enough to protect people from getting sick, even if they get the infection. We're also learning about protection against infection because this is something that wasn't clear from the trials, but in countries like Israel and the UK, which have been studying it very systematically, it appears that people who have received the first dose have about 70 to 80% protection against infection, and after the second dose, this could be even higher. Now, this may vary from vaccine to vaccine, so we cannot generalize. We need to collect more data. I think what's important to remember is that even as one gets vaccinated, we have to maintain all the other precautions and take all the other public health measures that WHO has been advocating, because each of these tools actually adds a layer of protection.
Soumya, we are seeing that people are tired. It's been long periods of isolation and being locked up in your homes. And so there are these gatherings that are happening, whether they're smaller family gatherings or bigger gatherings, mass gatherings. What does our evidence and data say about what happens to COVID-19 transmission when we gather and not observe the public health precautions?
So we've known for quite some time now about how this virus spreads and what it likes. It likes close contact between people. It likes crowded environments, and it likes closed settings, indoor settings with poor ventilation, so that it can spread most efficiently from person to person. We also know that many of the variants that are circulating now, particularly the variants of concern, are much more efficient, 1.5 to 2 times more efficient at spreading. So the virus has got smarter at spreading, it's just looking for opportunities. We know mass gatherings, whether they are, gatherings for weddings, or parties and pubs, or whether they are sporting events or religious events, that all of these have the potential to become mass spreading events. And we know from many documented research studies done last year that mass gatherings did result in a huge increase in infections, which are usually seen a couple of weeks later. So knowing all of this, I think it's really important. We understand that people are tired and they want to get back to normal life, but this is not the time to relax at all, because the vaccination programs in most countries have not even begun to approach the levels of herd immunity that we need. And so we need to recognize, people need to recognize that engaging in these kind of activities where we are gathering without any precautions is endangering not only themselves, but the lives of their loved ones and friends, and particularly the older people and the vulnerable people in the community.
Now, for more updates, visit News 5, the Philippine Star, and Business World Online. Visit our website, onenews.ph, for more in-depth analysis. You can also catch One News on Signal Play app. Register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. I'm Riza Diaz. We are One News.